Welcome everybody to another Sales War Chest webinar here with Magnify Consulting. And what we've got today is we're very privileged to have with us Peter Selby from Business Drivers. And what I'm going to do as well is just, there we go. And we'll just bring up the entrance screen for the webinar. Here we are. Okay, there we are. So, okay, so filling our screen today, we've got Peter Selby from Business Drivers, and of course, today's webinar is all about growth levers, the 5 hidden opportunities that your business could be missing. I was actually disappointed, wasn't I, Peter? This webinar, we were hoping to have it last week, and then we suddenly realised, goodness me, it's on the exact time as the New Zealand budget is getting announced. So we thought it's been hard
competing with Jacinda.
Yes, I know. It was hard enough trying to compete with Dr. Ashley Bloomfield at 1 o'clock on one of our webinar days. So we thought we won't compete with Jacinda. So we moved the webinar, and actually it's probably better timing. I'll just stop sharing the screen and we'll introduce everybody to Peter. It's probably better timing actually, because we've just had the budget announced, and of course there's been a lot of money released into the New Zealand budget, but there is pressure on New Zealand businesses. A lot of New Zealand businesses, they've claimed that subsidy, but of course that will be lifting in a few weeks for a lot of them, and then for some of them it might be extended, but only for about a further 8 weeks or so. So it's very timely to have you share today, Peter, because I know that all of us really want to know what are the right growth levers that we should be pushing or pulling in our businesses right now. When should we do it? How far should we pull them? What's going to happen if I pull this one here? So Peter, you're a well-known strategic advisor to businesses of all sizes, particularly to larger sized ones. And you've come from a strong corporate background. I'll just put everything over to you, Peter, to just give us a few more words about yourself, and love to hear you share. And of course, as we go, everybody, you've got a question and answer screen at the bottom, and I'll be checking the chat screen. If you've got a question or a thought that you'd like to interject in, please put it into the Q&A or to the chat screen, and we'll keep those questions moving as much as possible. Welcome, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I won't bore people too much with me, but I guess what I will do, I'll put up a few observations that we've seen in the market, certainly over the last 3 to 4 weeks, probably a bit longer, over the last quarter, I suppose. And these are really things that we've seen have been hidden opportunities for businesses, really of all sizes. So hopefully it's relevant for people. Just a little bit about myself. So I started life as an electrical engineering, actually, in the UK, in managing infrastructure, signalling systems, actually, on the railways. Moved to the Southern Hemisphere into Auckland, 1994, I think, something like that. So, and at that time was, I went into the steel industry. Actually, it was about setting up best practice into manufacturing. So the Southern Hemisphere, way back then, was kind of a little bit behind the rest of the world. I mean, it's all sort of one global market now. So I was charged with putting what was seen at the time as European best practice into the businesses to set them up for international standards like quality and safety management and all of those things, and bring some best practice manufacturing knowledge. So that's kind of how I got into the corporate world in the Southern Hemisphere, and worked in corporates then up until 2008, both here and in Europe, mainly in blue chip organizations, so large organizations in sort of senior executive roles, leading business units, etc. And then decided at the time, and this was around the year 2000, I'd also moved into Australia in the steel industry. And in Australia, there was a real two-speed market in the early part of the century, where you had oil and gas and minerals and all the money that came from that going gangbusters, and the rest of sort of logistics and manufacturing and third-party manufacturing was kind of struggling, and the good best practices you see in business was all at the behest of the blue chips that could afford it and have teams of consultants and teams of internal people and all the stuff that goes with it. So the figuring was there must be a way to put systems and methodologies into businesses of all sizes, and sort of get best practice available to everybody. And that was the mission that Business Drivers set up with back in 2008. And since then, I've been lucky enough to advise companies and executives on sort of business optimization, profit and growth internationally since then. So I'm very, very privileged, really, to be in that position. Look, I thought I'd share with you, I'll put some slides up just to demonstrate what I'm talking about and then get rid of them again, because the last thing I want to do is everyone fall asleep while I'm putting up slides. So let me just start with a couple of things. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. If you can't, Mary, please shout.
Okay.
But one of the very important things that we see, can everybody see? Can you see that, Mary? Is that up on the screen?
I can. Everybody in the chat, hope you can see that. Okay, Peter's got his first slide up, profits.
A picture of a cube, and it's
brilliant.
what we call the cube view. And the reason why this is important is before businesses try and do too much in the way of improving or looking for opportunities, profit-wise or growth-wise, it's really, really important to understand in depth what's going on in your business now. And this is a common thing that we see. Businesses charge on making change without really understanding what's happening at each, why it's called the cube view. If you've heard of 360, you look right around the business, from the front of the business to the back of the business. But you need to do that at all levels, from be it the business owner or the executive team or whoever it may be, right the way down through the business, and understand how those management systems interact. Because what we have seen is with all the best intentions, somebody will try and make something better in one part of the business, and it usually does, but it affects adversely something else in another part of the business that's not obviously connected. So it is really critical to do that, and we espouse that a lot with businesses to really make sure you understand the now before you start changing things. I don't know, Mary, whether you've had experience of that, but it's certainly something we see quite commonly.
Yeah, I do think understanding the now is pretty critical, because then you can actually figure out where you should pivot to next. If you don't understand the now enough, you might be covering old ground, or you might be missing something altogether that was significant. Yeah, so definitely would agree with that one. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll just take that to so really today, these are recent observations we've seen, and I'm going to share 5 of them. So they're not the absolutes, they're not the most important particularly, but they're certainly probably the most common that we see currently. And hopefully sharing these with people might stir some thoughts, even on even this time of day after everyone's had lunch. But I'll take you through these one at a time. So the first one is having a real X-ray view of the market. And I'd say that now is probably never been a more critical time to do this, because the landscape's likely to have changed in your market, whether you're aware of it or not. One of the things that are more common than ever are disruptive plays into the market. There's more disruptive industries, there's more startups now than there ever has been in history. A lot of people don't truly understand their customer pulse, and what I mean by that isn't surveying your customer once a year and seeing what's going on. What are they feeling all the time, and what are they feeling right now compared to how they were feeling a few months ago? And what are your customers' midterm aspirations? Because I guarantee they have changed in the last 8 weeks. And how does that affect your market? Has it closed segments off in your market? Has it opened up new ones? Do you really understand your market share in those segments now compared to how it was before? So this is something that we've seen that has tripped people up. And I'm talking before COVID, just not having a good X-ray view of your market trips people up generally, but now especially. And I guess the point I make at the bottom here, if you're consistently losing ground, it's eventually terminal, right? There's no subtle way to put that. And I'll give you some case studies as we go through this. Let me just get off the screen a minute so everyone hasn't dropped asleep. I'll try and give you, for each one of these, an example of where we've seen it. And the example I'm going to give you today was a large building services company, actually. This particular organization was based in the UK, but it makes no difference from the perspective of the conversation. And the market had shifted slowly, as it often does, but the organization itself, and this is a very large blue chip that has the resources and a full marketing team and all the stuff that goes around it, hadn't really picked up on the shift in temperament, the shift in desire for product, and the shift in a desire for the way that service was delivered. And it didn't become apparent until they started losing major contracts. And unfortunately, I was in there at the time trying to sort the business out, so I know this personally, but it's just a good example. It took 3 financial cycles, so 3 years, to recover from that situation. They were nearly squeezed out of the market altogether. And the thing is with this, it's gradual. You don't notice it. If you don't have a good pulse on your market consistently, these things slip away over time. And it was nearly terminal for them. I mean, they did recover from it, but a smaller company wouldn't have done, actually. They had to fund themselves for a couple of years and reinvent their approach to market, reinvent their product. A lot of work had to be done to recover from that position.
Wow. That is incredible, because perhaps what COVID-19 has actually revealed for some businesses, maybe it was something that was changing anyway, and they just didn't see it in time, and now, of course, it's very challenging for some organizations. Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any thoughts or comments around that stuff, and please, people, there's a chat. I don't know if people can voice stuff as well, but do comment as we go. Don't save it to the end because you'll forget. But if that struck a chord with anybody, or there's questions or anything, please stop me waffling.
Absolutely.
And ask,
Yeah, that's good. Nothing in there just yet, yes.
But a very, very common problem we see. I'll take you to the second point. And again, this relates a little bit to what I talked about before, and I'm just going to try and bring a slide up here, testing my skills here. Hang on, share. This is showing up my webinar skills. Can anyone see that slide?
Yes, absolutely.
So we talked a little bit more about really understanding the now, but you can't build a path to a resilient future unless you really understand all these elements. And again, some examples of that, you understand every enterprise, no matter how big or small it is, has a transactional world in, a physical world out. Do you understand how that process works? Do you understand the waste that's in that process? I think we've got Stephen online, who's one of the consultants in our business, actually, who spends his life doing this stuff. But it's because if there is, and when I say waste, we're describing waste as a product, a service, or an action that doesn't add value to the customer at the end. So is it because you're doing business for yourselves? Is it internal stuff? Is it checking that's not necessary? Whatever it may be. It's unbelievable how much money is tied up in bad business process. And when we go through and do transformation processes through businesses, large business I'm talking about now, there's probably 50% of the savings would come from these systems of how you manage the business and how they interact. So I can't really, I can't overstate the importance of this. And I'll just get rid of the slides. Some examples. How does the process talk to itself? What sort of platforms are you using in smaller businesses? How flexible are you into the market? How quickly can you react to things from a management's perspective? How real time is the data you're trying to make decisions on? And how do those systems relate to your strategy? So if you've got a strategy to do something in a business or a market, how well aligned to those strategies are your management systems at the moment? And it's all sounds a bit high and convoluting, but it's not, because it drives everything, even in a small business. And I'll give you a case study here. This was an Australian company in the steel industry, and really didn't understand their interconnected processes into the supply chain from their business. They had waste all over the place as a result of that, and just poor strategic planning. It meant they were leaving a lot of margin behind in a competitive market where you've got a price ceiling because things are so competitive. The way you get your profits is making sure everything's sufficient in the business. And because of that duplicated waste across their processes, they were just leaving money on the table, if you like. So it's something for people to think about. It's a common problem we see in this particular example I'm talking about. I'm trying to think what the savings were, but it was considerable. It was $500,000 to $1 million a year or something. So substantial saving all through money that was just being left behind through them not understanding those processes.
Wow. That's really good. I guess too, like, it would be great if you could actually find that money right now and put it back into your business.
Oh yeah.
It would beat diving down the back of the couch for a bit of small change, wouldn't it? Yes.
But that's interesting you say that. I mean, normally a good dive into these processes and certainly understanding those relationships, and we do a lot of auditing with businesses around this.
Yeah.
Does uncover that it uncovers the opportunities very quickly. Some of the opportunities are harder to get to than others, depending on the size of the organization. The smaller the organization, the quicker you can find it normally. Yeah. Obviously, the larger organizations tend to have more interacting processes and systems, and therefore it can be harder work to get to it, if you like. So it's normally an opportunity for everybody, but certainly it's something to think about now when things are going to be tight anyway. There's going to be a lot more competition for the companies that come out of the shutdown well. And does that put a price on your does it put a ceiling on your price? Who knows? Depends what you're doing. But certainly if you're wasting cash inside your business, now is the time to find it. There's no doubt. So I agree with you. Get your hand down the back of the couch. See what you can find. Yes. Make sure you don't get your hand bitten. But
Yes. Oh, wow. And when you say larger businesses, Peter, what kind of turnover are we talking about for that sort of thing?
In the particular case I was talking about, the $1 million saving, that was what size was that business? That's a good question. 50 million, something like that. So quite, a medium-sized enterprise.
Pretty substantial, really.
So it's a pretty substantial margin that wasn't there. And we've come across bigger ones, there's another case study coming up. There's an even bigger return than that. But it's relative, So I mean, if you're a small business turning over $1 million and you find, $20,000 of savings or something like that, it's significant. Wow.
That's life-changing right now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Anybody want 20 grand? Yes, please, I'll have it.
Yeah, most definitely.
You can't underestimate this stuff, and it's surprising because the problem with business systems, they evolve over time as you try and evolve as a business. So the systems develop by osmosis rather than strategic design, and unless you go back and review them reasonably regularly, slowly these things create waste in themselves, and there are hundreds of examples of this, but waste in a business, as in activity that's not adding value to the business, can be anything up to 30 to 40%. And that sounds a lot. It can't be, that's too much, but it's actually, the reason why it tops out there, anything beyond that, anything beyond sort of 30%, you can feel it and you trip over it and you do something about it.
Oh, okay.
Waste can be hidden away in systems in the day-to-day noise, up to about 30%. So it's really significant.
Yeah, that is, isn't it? Even for a smaller business, that's a lot of money.
Totally, and it's not always obvious. So I mean, you've heard of people going in and mapping their processes. Well, the reason why they do that is because until you do that, you actually can't find this stuff. It's so hidden away. It's so normal to you. The day-to-day, the way you run your business is absolutely normal. It's that fresh perspective that changes everything, So try and rethink your processes, or get somebody to help you do that, or whatever it may be, but try and take a fresh look at the way you're managed from the front to the back of the business. And I guarantee you, this is a guarantee here and now, I guarantee you'll find money. How much, I don't know, but you guarantee it. We have never, ever come across a business that's so well run, there's no savings to be found, ever. It's just impossible, because there's so many things going on all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, very good. Well, what's next? What's the next one we should look out for?
Okay, so I'll just pop this thing back up again. Number 3. So, diminishing return on investments of your operations. Probably the second most common thing we see, and again, like losing your position in the market, this is something that happens slowly. It's insipid. You don't necessarily notice it. It could be lack of overarching innovation in the way you think about your business. It could be lack of innovation investment in your business. It could be, if you're an operational type business, it could be a plant and equipment investment, or maintenance systems, or utilization of your plant. If you're a service or a manufacturer, it could be quality, or your quality strategy is not good and it's creating more cost than you need to deliver whatever you're doing. The most common point I'm about to make is financial controls. So again, about having real-time data to make decisions on. Are you making decisions too late? Is the data you're using not as connected to your costs as you think it is? And that is quite common, especially in big organizations where they have a monthly reporting cycle. Let me just get this. I try and not stay on slides too long. I've caught that person over there who was asleep, you see. What did I tell you? Financial controls not actually being as connected to the frontline expense is really, really common. And the more complex the business, the easier that is to happen as you amalgamate results as they work up through the organization. So understanding that, and understanding how real time it is, and are the decisions you're making the real cost decisions you think you are, would be one of the most common things that eats away slowly at margins. Lack of controls around a product or a service delivery. So this is at the other end of your operations, where it might interface with the client or leave your facility to go for whatever it is you're doing. Again, lack of controls down there will really, again, slowly eat away at margin. One of the things I ask companies before I ever do any work with them is just to see their sales and their margins over the last 3 years. And it's amazing how many people actually don't trend that. So when they give me the information, oh my goodness, that's not a very good start. They sort of realize it's a problem just by showing you it. So it's really, really common, because people tend to live at the minute. They might be worried about their profits for the next 3 months. Oh my goodness, but take the time to stand back and trend what's going on. Is it telling you anything? Are things slightly eroding? If your sales are steady, but your profits are decreasing, you're losing margin somewhere. I think, raw materials and things become more expensive. We all get that. And there's a limit to how much you can pass back into the market. But equally, are there things you can be doing that are more effective than 6 months ago? Are you a more efficient business, Mary, than you were 6 months ago? I don't know the answer to that, but do you check?
Well, I have been recently, which is why you've ended up on here today, Peter, because I've actually been working with you and getting some insight into my business. And even though Magnify is smaller than the 50 million type businesses that you may have dealt with on some of your engagements, it's still amazing what a deep dive down the back of the couch can find when you well, it is really, and I know, for instance, in our household, sometimes I've found torches and things down the back of the couch. One of my kids put a torch, or crayons, felt pens. One child likes to eat lollies on the sofa. You find a few lollies down the side of the couch sometimes, and then you feel embarrassed that you haven't been looking down the couch regularly. It's a bit like your business though, isn't it? You don't always look in that deeply, and if you could do it regularly, you'd stop that stuff from building up and you'd be able to deal with it.
There's a great question come up here, which I'll just read out to everybody. It says, hi Peter, how well do you think businesses understand their model that may have to be reinvented to survive in a post shutdown market, you know? So it's a really good question.
It is.
The answer to that is generally not that well. And again, I go back to that, talking about that cube view from before. It's the 80-20 rule, I guess. 80% of businesses we come across don't understand their model as well as they think they do, and certainly don't understand how that interacts with the market as well as they think they do. And if there's a lot of shifting sands, which there is right now, I mean, you know, we're changing on a weekly basis at the moment, then not being across that stuff can actually cause you quite a lot of problems. And you know, the smaller the business, probably the smallest business we deal with are around the $1 million mark, you know. The smaller end of town is less resilient to things going wrong if they don't have a good handle on their system. So the bigger companies can ride it out sometimes, but even then, you know, you see major corporations go under when the things change quicker than they can react to. One of the golden rules in business, I mean, if the market outside is changing quicker than your business, you're losing ground. There's a simple rule for you.
Yeah, I was thinking, what does all this remind me of the other night? And then I realized it. And it's, you know, that movie, The Hunger Games, where, I don't know if you've seen that movie. I went to see it with one of my kids. I actually found it a bit scary, but anyway, there we go. But what it's kind of about is this big kind of game of going through almost like an obstacle course so that you can basically live. But as you're running through the obstacle course, the landscape's changing. So you think, oh, I'm going to have to go across the lake that way. And then something changes and you have to pivot. And I think doing business at the moment for a lot of us is a little bit like being in a real life Hunger Games, you know, with the landscape changing so much.
Just a quick case study from that was a technology company in Australia. I won't say where, but it's a big country, but it was in Australia on the eastern seaboard. They manufactured their own product and serviced it out, and it was servicing the construction industry. And we unlocked about 3% to their bottom line there, which for them was about $2 million. And that was just through looking at some of the levers in their operational costs and the return on investment through their whole operational system. So, you know, if you wind that down to a smaller business, that could be $100,000. It could be $10,000. You know, again, just think about the return on investment you're getting through the operation of your business. We okay to move on?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just check. Did we answer that question? We did. Okay, so we'll put done. We've done that one. That's great. Keep the questions coming, folks. There's some good information here. There we go.
Okay, I'll move on to the next. I'll just put a slide back a minute. The most common problem, supply chain, and probably one of the most relevant things to talk about today. So I'll spend a few minutes on this, but the guy that was making the comments about the big money just now, this is his world. And the reason why this is so important, it affects every single organization. Doesn't matter the size of the organization. If you turn over $10,000 a year or 100 million or $1 billion, you'll be affected by supply chain. And interestingly, you know, COVID's taught us a few lessons around the resilience of your supply chain in the last few weeks, but I'll just go through some points here. Lack of procurement controls around your pricing, and the more complex the organization and the more different touch points there are to buying things, the more this needs to be under control, and more often, the more it's not. So if you see price variation, and we've been working with a client recently in New Zealand where there was huge variation and literally millions of dollars, where suppliers, because they knew they didn't have good controls here, were charging them different prices for the same thing in different parts of the business. Unbelievable, really. And that sounds very careless, if you like, but it's not. If you don't have good controls, you can't tell it's happening, especially in a dynamic business that's complex, you know. So watch out for your controls around your procurement. Economic order quantities. Do you really understand the best order quantities for products into your business? Because it's not just about where you get the price break. You know, if you buy 10, you get $3 off if you buy 100. You know, it's not just about that. It's also about the cost for you to carry that inventory and how long you have to carry it for should you buy too much. And that ties right back into how well you're forecasting that. You know, you're buying it too early or you're buying it too late. There's a cost of carrying this stuff. The thing is with inventory is it's cash. It's the worst possible thing to be holding if you don't need it. Releasing inventory, and I won't get into the theories of all this stuff, but there's things called material requirements planning, which is all around not bringing in stuff until you need it and getting rid of it as quickly as possible and turning it into added value and billing the customer. Because everything you hold inside the business is cash tied up, and cash, as everybody knows in any business, cash is king, you know. Again, these are common things we see. Okay, inventory not optimized, so people carrying old stock, people carrying the wrong stock, people carrying stock for too long, people not having it when they need it and letting the customer down, all of that stuff. There's quite a lot of science behind it, and obviously the more of the inventory you carry as an organization, the bigger the problems can be, and obviously the bigger the opportunities to find stuff down the back of the couch, as Mary put it. Lack of velocity. So this is, again, how fast can you get something that you buy, add your value to it, and bill to the customer? The quicker you can do that, the quicker the cash comes into the business, the less time you've got your money tied up in either suppliers' goods or tied up in work in progress through your organization. And that sounds like a very manufacturing term, but it could be anything that you have to buy, that you do something to before you sell it to the customer. The quicker you can do that, the faster you get paid, the quicker you release the cash. So really, really important having that velocity. Distribution, and this is probably for larger organizations, but again, a very common thing. So distribution out into the market, how well have you got that optimized? For your service, for your product, whatever it may be. If it's taking any longer than it needs to from leaving your business to you billing your customer, that's waste. Can you speed that up? Can you make it more efficient? Can you get the cost down of that transport, whatever it may be? And the last point, particularly important, I think, at the moment, is resilience. So the resilience of your supply, the resilience through your supply chain to your customers. You know, we heard a lot about people getting caught out that were buying all their product from China recently, and all their product from overseas, and then the borders shut. Yes, product's still coming in, but it's taking longer. This was letting people down, and we've seen customers have some real issues with this. Do you buy locally? Is buying locally more expensive? Yes, but you know, can you balance that to increase your resilience? I'll just get this slide off. So pretty important right now, you know. And I've got to say, there's probably more savings in the supply chain area than anywhere else in business, because it touches every part of your business. So optimizing that not only creates cash, but it creates savings. You know, it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
Should have had it as number one, in fact.
Oh, goodness me, goodness. Well, sometimes you put the meat in the sandwich, don't you? So it's one of the middle slides. But I guess too, like one of the things that occurs to me is, you know, as a business that's obviously for me less than 50 million, but that would be a great place to be, but less than 50 million. So on that smaller side of the sort of stuff that you were talking about, a lot of things that my business deals with, we really only got room for one supplier. So if that supplier fell over for some reason, we haven't got a backup, you know, and I think there'd be a lot of businesses at that smaller end of town that wouldn't have a backup. Some of the businesses that are represented today will be smaller size, some of them will be larger size.
Sure.
In terms of the smaller size business, so we're talking sort of maybe even 2 million or less, that kind of range. What would you suggest you could do to give yourself a more resilient supply chain if you only have kind of enough spending power that you've got one supplier for each of your key things? Is there anything you should be doing there, or?
Well, definitely. I mean, there's no harm in having one supplier if that's all your business needs.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then make sure that supply is secure. So, you know, as much as you need to understand your customers' business plans and what their challenges are right now and how that's changed, equally, you need to understand your suppliers as well. So, you know, if you've got a supplier that looks like they're struggling and there is some doubt around that supply, you should be looking for your second supply, your plan B or plan C or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
harm in just having one supplier, but you do need to understand the resilience of that supplier if you're relying on one only.
There's a couple of comments actually in the Q&A about that. So we've got one comment. Hi Peter, we've just started to realise the perils of supply chain dependence on China and the need to diversify to alternate sourcing strategies from the Asia Pacific region. There's another comment.
Very relevant, and
yes.
The point that's being made there, you know, that really has opened up, raised a few eyebrows, I guess, with this pandemic. People did not understand how quickly things can close down. And you get into these old patterns of supply and demand and think that it's solid, you know, the world's not going to change. Who would have thought we'd have all been locked in our houses 5 months ago? I mean, it's just unbelievable. But that's how quickly things can change, and it can change in business too. And there's politics around this stuff, you know, where Australia's starting to get into a bit of a spat with China right now over trade. And any country can do that. And just thinking, you know, New Zealand, just remember where it is. It's in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, it's the back of the world. So a lot of companies do rely on imports as a way of doing business. So really understand the resilience of those imports. We should move on, or we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Here we go.
I'll just share again quickly. Sorry to bore you all to death. The other thing I'd say is getting a fresh perspective in your business. And I'm not saying this because I'm a consultant and I advise businesses, because I mean this for all businesses of all sizes. Try and get a fresh perspective on what you're doing. Interestingly, the perceived risk of investment around trying to improve your business or getting help to improve your business stops about 80% of business improvement. It's incredible. Yet there's always ways around doing this effectively. I'll give you some example. All the case studies I've given you today, when we've done it in a way that's been self-funding. It's cost the client nothing. But you know, I'm not saying that to advertise us particularly. I'm just saying that there's always a way around finding professional help or a different perspective. It doesn't have to be a consultant. It can be someone else just with a different set of eyes. And I'm just trying to stop sharing this a second.
Yeah.
Most of the people that we come across when we've worked with them, I wasn't sharing anyway. There's my
no. Yeah.
But most of the clients we do work with wished they had hired help before they had, and it's this resistance that comes. You know, it's going to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to be that way at all. There's always smart ways you can do this stuff. For our customers, really all our customers, but certainly the larger ones, even when it's major business transformation, we do it in a way that costs them no money. It's all self-funding, you know. And you know, the largest one we've done recently, we found $12 million worth of savings in a business that was turning over about 300 million. So that's really, you know, that's a significant amount of margin. But for smaller businesses, still think about this stuff. Get a fresh perspective. Mary, you can speak for that yourself. You've got a different view of your business today than you did have a month ago, you know?
Yeah. I think actually, and you know, I've worked with you and I've worked with a few other people as well, I'd have to say, and each time you work with someone, they do have a fresh set of eyes and they all bring different skills. And it's like someone going, come on, stop working so hard, come and walk up the top of Mount Kaukau, which is a good hilltop lookout where I live. Let's just go and look at the city. And you get up there and you can see the sea and you've got the wind in your face and you just come back quite different. And you come back and you see your life quite differently because you just had that headspace. But unless you put time into it, it doesn't happen, you know. You might think, oh, I'll put aside, I don't know, an hour on a Wednesday or something like that. But then there's always a reason why that Wednesday gets eaten up, because actually the only person I'm accountable to is myself. But when you work with other people and then they give you insight, you have to turn up for things, don't you? And that actually pushes you. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you get desensitized to your environment, so you cannot see what's right in front of you because you see it every day.
Yeah. No,
I'll give you an example. We did a safety study a long time ago in a steel plant in a rolling mill. And very, very dangerous in my environment, molten steel running around at high speeds. And it was on a maintenance day, so the plant was down. We got the operators out and tried to get them to identify hazards in their workplace, and they couldn't. They found maybe 5 or 10. We took a group of people from a completely different part of the business and got them to do the thing, and they came up with hundreds.
Wow.
It's because you cannot see what's around you every day. So, getting a fresh perspective on something is, we make a living out of that because it's so powerful when you do it, and you couldn't make a living otherwise, So, I can't underestimate it. Especially now when there's been change all around you, if you can find somebody to help you, come in and have a fresh set of eyes, you'll be amazed at what you'll uncover.
Oh, definitely. And that was your 5th point, essentially, wasn't it? I don't think we saw that slide. We're certainly recording this, but if you want to share your screen just for a second,
I will do that now.
Try and put that slide up, point 5, just for those that will have a look at the recording.
Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so look, as I say, 80% of opportunities stop with this stuff, and everything can be self-funding. You don't need to be tied into worrying about hefty consultant fees or anything else. There's always ways to look at it. And the other thing I'd say, are we up for time at the moment?
Well, we've got about probably 3 to 5 minutes, and because I've got a couple of slides at the end that are just a thank you for coming.
Well,
I'll
look,
take a couple of minutes for that. But let's just.
What I would offer to people that have taken the time to come and listen to all this, I'm quite happy to give you a free exploratory session if you want to talk about your business, and you think that a fresh set of ears might help you. It's not a sell. This is a commitment from me. I don't know how many people there are. There's 10 or 12 people on the call. If you want to talk for an hour and just think about how you might approach doing things differently or where you could get some help, just email. You can go onto the website at the bottom here, bizdrivers.bizconsult, and just book an hour of my time. It's in my diary there, or call us on those numbers. More than happy to give an hour up to everybody and help them along. I mean, everybody needs as much help as they can get at the moment. So don't feel that it's not a sales push. There's no sales spin at the end of it. There's no commitment or anything. It really is an hour of time there to use if you want it, and ask questions about what we see in the market, anything that can help you.
Yeah. Oh, look, thanks, Peter. That's awesome. And let's just check the Q&A. Someone's just said explore alliance and partnership supply chain models. So that was in reference to making a more resilient supply chain. So I think we've dealt with most of that. I think we've dealt with most of the stuff in the chat. What I'll do now is I'll just get my screen share up, because we've just got a final couple.
Hey, goodness, you're no longer relying on my skills around.
There we go.
Around Zoom.
Yes. Now, we do like, because this is Sales War Chest, we do like to have a, here we go, next one. We do like to have a last word from Winston Churchill, great leader that he was in the war. Obviously, probably not everything was perfect, but there's some good sayings that Winston has. So let our advanced worrying become advanced thinking and planning. And when I was looking for a Winston Churchill quote for today, and I was thinking about what we're going to cover here today, I thought, actually, that's the slide, isn't it? So, you can sit worrying, or you can actually take that worrying time and let's try and use it for advanced thinking and planning. And we won't anticipate everything, but we'll surely get some part of the way towards making our future better if we actually start taking some actions there. And over here we've got, look, let's keep in touch. And we will, of course, send out a thank you email to everybody that's registered and that's come along. So if you want to speak with Peter, here's his email address, peter.selby, SELBY, @bizdrivers.biz. And then my email's here, hello@magnifyconsulting.co.nz. And that's Sales War Chest for this week. Peter, I'd really like to thank you for coming along and sharing about those 5 growth levers for opportunities that we could be missing. And we'll just stop the sharing now. Really encourage everybody, as much as you're able, to get some insight, get somebody alongside you to support you and get a fresh perspective, and just see what's down the back of your proverbial business.
I guarantee you will find something. Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
brilliant. Oh, very good. Okay. Well, look, thank you so much. That's great. Brilliant.
Thanks very much.